Welcome and good morning to the online, live Sunday service of the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. Our mission is to build community, seek inspiration, promote justice, and find peace. And from wherever you are gathered this morning, we welcome you wholeheartedly. I am Reverend Florence Kaplow, the lead minister of this church, coming to you live from our sanctuary for the first time since last March on a stormy Labor Day Sunday morning. There are 4 of us in the sanctuary here this morning. We have Matthew Gladden on the piano, Steve Troyer and Chris Hanauer managing AV. Thank you, guys. They're waving back, and me here in the pulpit. If you'd like to follow along with our written order of service, you can find it on our live stream page. Just scroll down a little bit below the live stream window. Also, if you'd like to participate by chat with others during the service, you can head on over to our UUCUC channel and watch there and participate by chat. You can find that link as well on our live stream page. Our theme for this fall is transformation and love. We are in a time of profound disruption. And disruption also means transformation, the possibility of transformation. And I believe that in hard times, challenging times, what is most needed is love, and that love and transformation really must go hand in hand. Each Sunday, we begin with a land acknowledgement of the indigenous peoples of this land. Wherever you are listening this morning, please bring to mind the indigenous peoples of the land where you are right now, as I say these words of our land acknowledgement, which can also be found at the bottom of our order of service. And there will be a moment of silence immediately following the acknowledgement. We recognize and acknowledge that we gather today on indigenous land, taken through deception, coercion, and violence. We acknowledge the continued displacement and oppression of Native peoples and honor their commitments to survival, identity, and the protection of our world. Thank you. You might be wondering, how is a service dedicated to praise of the US Postal Service relevant to our values as Unitarian Universalists, relevant to our justice work as a congregation, relevant to our lives? How can I count the ways? I think of the cards that so many of us here in the church have received from Dee Dee Marble and other members of Care Corps, perhaps when we first came to the church, during a difficult time in our lives, or just because. I think of the Christmas cards, more than 300 sent to all the members of the church by people in the membership committee last Christmas. I think of the ways that the post office truly keeps us part of an interconnected whole. Mail crisscrossing the country and the world, even as I speak. The letters of acceptance from the college that you or your child or grandchild received in the mail. The letter I received joyfully earlier this year from the Ministerial Fellowship Committee of the UUA announcing that I was now in full and final fellowship as a Unitarian Universalist minister after many, many years of preparation. The handmade solstice cards I have sent out for more than 30 years. I'll go to a friend's house. I've sent to friends and family, and I'll see an old one still tacked to the refrigerator. Truly, so much love moves through the postal system. And how much love and appreciation do we remember to offer back to the workers, to this system that keeps us connected? Or do we take it for granted? And right now, I just want to offer to the kids among us, or really anyone, that if you like to be doing something during the service, you could get out a piece of paper and draw something or write something and send it in the mail later, after the service. I know there are a lot of people in this community who are working on letters to voters here in this state and elsewhere, really encouraging them to vote in November. You could pull those out and be citing those during the service. We want this to be interactive. In this time of pandemic, a functioning postal service is more than ever essential for our democracy. And although it has been under siege for a long time, it appears more imperiled than ever before. I had a sign that I had at the demonstration a few weeks ago at the post office, and it read, "Love birthday cards, love democracy, save our post office." And it turns out that one of our own members, Tamara Dicey, had a 33-year career as a Postal Service worker. You'll hear more of her story later in the service. And now Matthew has a little relevant offering for us. You'll notice an email address on the video where you can send your joys and sorrows to be shared aloud today, since we are once again live this Sunday morning. Matthew.
Good morning, and again, welcome to everyone joining us here at the Unitarian Universalist Church of Urbana-Champaign. My name is Reverend Sally Fritchie, and I am overjoyed to be here with you on my first Sunday as your new Associate Minister for Congregational Life. And even though we're kept at a distance and we'll be getting to know each other mostly through screens, I have already been warmly welcomed into this community, and I look forward to meeting each and every one of you in the coming days. For now, let us light our chalice and enter into its warm circle of light. The flaming chalice is the symbol of our faith tradition and connects us to all those who have lit similar flames over the centuries. If you have a chalice at home or a candle to light, I invite you to join me in marking out this time and space as special and worthy of a little extra warmth and light. In recognition of Labor Day, today's chalice flame is lit to honor those who work with their hands and their backs, in gratitude for all the essential labors that support our world, not just in the metaphorical sense, but in the literal sense. The work of lifting, delivering, cleaning, caring, and so much more. May this flame light the way toward a world in which all laborers are safe, respected, and fairly compensated. And may it light the way for those who boldly continue all the types of work that will lead us toward justice, equity, and peace.
It is such a joy to have Reverend Sally Fritchie joining us this fall. I hope you all felt a little tingle of that joy as well when you saw her face this morning as she lit a chalice. Please consider joining next week for our service where Sally will offer her first sermon for our church. The following poem was what inspired this service, really. It's by the Reverend Julia Hamilton, and it's called A Prayer for the Post Office. Here we go, and slightly abridged here. This is a nonpartisan prayer about something as mundane as mail, as gentle as the swish of a letter falling to the floor by the door. This is a prayer for stamps and stamp collectors, the quietest of hobbies, for pen pals and thank you card writers, for grandparents who always remember your birthday, and love letters from the war kept at the bottom of a drawer. This is a prayer for the quiet dignity of the blue mailbox down the block and around the corner, standing like a sentinel, portal to anywhere for just the cost of a stamp. Walking to the mailbox was my daughter's first independent adventure. The responsibility of an envelope, addressed and ready in her small, serious hands. Her nervous departure from the front door alone, and her triumphant return minutes later. I did it, Mama. I mailed the letter all by myself. Do you remember the wonder of it? Dropping a letter in one place, mouth of the box swinging open and shut, eating the envelope like a cookie monster, only to have that same letter reappear days later in another place. It is a mundane miracle. This is a prayer for the carriers on their routes, the clerk at the window, the backroom sorters and the delivery truck drivers moving mountains, one piece at a time, passing along that which was entrusted to them. Electric bills, bank statements, birthday cards, ballots. Hear us, God of the taken for granted things, divine mystery of overnight delivery, spirit of civic life. May we preserve this minor magic of letter and stamp, scale and package, sorting machine and postbox, so that children, our children, do not shake their heads and wonder at all the things we allowed to slip away. It's quite a poem. We as Unitarian Universalists acknowledge and know that we are truly part of the interdependent web of everything. The connections with each other, with the community around us, and with the wide, wide world. So a few quick ways that we are connected. One is tonight at 6 p.m., perhaps you enjoyed the Sangamon River Forest Preserve sermon last week. Andy Robinson and I, this evening at 6, as I said, will be leading, or actually just curating maybe, a very safe and physically distanced walk and stroll through the Sangamon River Preserve. So if you feel like joining us, please look for directions in e-news or online and show up at 6 o'clock in the parking lot there. And that reminds me, if you don't get our e-news and you'd like to, you can find a link for signing up right on our live stream page if you scroll down a little bit. Each month, we share half of our Sunday offering with organizations that are in alignment with our values, doing good work in our community and beyond. This month, our shared offering is one that is very close to my heart, the CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. Karen Sims, the founder and director, has a few words for us. I just want to offer deep gratitude to you, Karen, for your healing work in the CU community. And after these words, there will be an opportunity to give to our shared offering by text or online. Half of our offering will be shared this month with the CU Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. Please give generously.
Hi, thank you so much for the opportunity to spend a few minutes to tell you about the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative and how we've used your resources, your prayer, your thoughts, your support to make a difference in the lives of families in Champaign County. I sometimes feel like it has been congregations like the UU Church, but especially the UU Church and its members that have helped shape, define, and make our work meaningful and impactful. Volunteers like David Sutton, who was tireless advocate for all the work that we did, and other people who've come along the journey have just made a difference. So I just want to say first, thank you. I also want to use this time to tell you a little bit about one incident about how we've used your support. As many of you are aware, this year has been a particularly violent one for Champaign County. In addition to all of the losses with COVID, we've had a number of families adversely impacted by gun violence. And earlier this summer, we were called to provide support to a young mom who was pregnant, who lost the father of her child, to gun violence. He was murdered and died on her living room floor. Her young child, her sister, and some extended family were there witnessing his death. They were devastated. So when we were called in to provide support, we listened deeply because that's the role of the Community Violence Response Team and the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. And we asked her, what would healing look like? What is it that she really needed? And she needed to get to safety. She wanted to get back on her feet. She wanted to feel like she could be restored, and we helped her along with that journey. Thanks to your donation and volunteers, she got moved. She found new housing that is safe and affordable and secure. She found new employment that is COVID friendly and good for her family. Her kiddos are in great childcare, and that was just one small way that we were able to get her back to healing thanks to your generous donation and your ongoing support. So I hope you can continue to think about the Trauma and Resiliency Initiative. We would also use funds to promote 2 other efforts that we have, a youth development program called the Peer Ambassadors Program, and they are elevating the voices of vulnerable girls who are at risk for homelessness, who might become impacted by other forms of exploitation, and our Here For You mental health support work. Stay safe and well, and thank you so much for this opportunity. I'm looking forward to partnering with you in the future.
Well, good morning, Tamara, and thank you for agreeing to this brief interview. I discovered a couple of weeks ago when we were at the Urbana Post Office together, demonstrating in support of the Postal Service, that you had worked for the post office, and I had had no idea. And so I just really wanted to talk with you on this Labor Day weekend about what that was like for you.
Thank you. I started at the Urbana Post Office in 1979 after graduating from the University of Illinois. I had friends that worked for the Postal Service, so they suggested I test and see if I could possibly get a position in the post office. And that worked out. I was offered a clerk position at the Urbana office and sold stamps and worked at Urbana until 84, so about 5 years there. And then I took a transfer up to Minneapolis, St. Paul, and continued working there until early 2013. I did not really expect it to turn into a career, but it did.
So the other thing I was wondering is if you have a story you want to share, either from your own life or one that you heard from a coworker.
Sure. I actually met a letter carrier in Minneapolis. His name was Vince Wyckoff, and he has now retired. He delivered a route near where I lived in South Minneapolis, and he actually wrote a collection of little stories about customers and folks on his route called "Beware the Cat."
And there's a cat right in on the spot.
Yeah. And that cat looks very subtle and demure, but the cat he was referring to in these stories, he went up on a porch to deliver mail, and it was a new family that lived there, and they actually had a sign next to their door that said, "Beware the cat." And he thought it was kind of a joke, but as he stepped up onto the front steps, he heard a growling in the corner of the porch. And as he looked over, the cat leapt from the corner of the porch, climbed up his leg, knocked him down the stairs. His mail all flew out of his mail bag. And he said after that, he took the "Beware the Cat" sign very seriously. He said many people thought that it was the dogs that were his biggest problem, but in this case, it was the cat. And it's a wonderful collection of stories. Some of the stories are very, very sweet about relationships he developed with his customers. He probably saved a few people's lives, actually, because he was aware if they were not picking up their mail and didn't come to the door to greet him. And mailmen definitely become part of their customers' lives.
So one last thing, which is if you, you have the attention of a few hundred people in the congregation right now.
Yes.
One thing that you would ask of them as people who use the Postal Service, appreciate or haven't thought to appreciate the Postal Service and the people who work there, what's one thing that people can do that would be helpful?
Try to remember the value of your Postal Service. How would you feel if you went to your mailbox and it stopped coming? There was nothing there. A lot of it we may not want to receive, but much of it we take for granted, I believe. And to be able to have access to that, to be able to connect with somebody that lives in Alaska or Hawaii or anywhere in the world almost. It's not as immediate as the internet or email, but there's a different quality to it and a different connection. And it's a service that was intended to be there for all of us, universal and affordable. And if we lose it, that would be a horrible thing. Please contact your legislators and let them know that you value the Postal Service and we need to support it.
I really want to thank Tamara for her sharing with us this morning. And if you enjoyed her interview but would like to hear the full unedited version, it will be on our website and Facebook page later this week. Every Sunday that we gather together, we bring and carry our individual joys and sorrows with us. During this time of the service, I invite you to bring those joys and sorrows to mind as we listen or sing along to the blessing song that has become part of our tradition here. I encourage you to sing along or just let it wash over you as a blessing from us to you. I have a few joys and sorrows to share this morning. The first is from Sam Bashirs and Lynn Wiley. Sorrow for our dog Bingley, who died suddenly a week and a half ago. His presence is still strongly felt and greatly missed. From Marie McEnroe, several residents and staff in the same nursing home as my sister Amanda have tested positive for COVID-19. Please keep all the residents, their loved ones, and the staff in your thoughts and prayers. And I'll add one from myself as well, which is that 2 people have tested positive at the senior living facility, independent living, where my mother lives. So let's hold all those many people, even from our congregation, who are living in places where seniors are gathered together and are at some risk. From Tamara Dicey, a joy. For the opportunity to drink morning coffee with my brother Rock, who has recovered from a brain aneurysm and will be in CU at least until the Canadian border opens. Thank you all for the love, prayers, and positive energy. This one is from Dee Dee Marble, and so that no one panics, this is in reference to a hospital stay she had a couple of weeks ago, not another more recent one. I say that because I panicked when I read it and I checked with her. Dee Dee Marble is pleased to be resting at home after a stay at Hotel Carl Hospital. She will continue with tests as an outpatient. She would welcome cards and/or phone calls. Morning calls are best. And a joy from Kathy Ritchie. 1 year ago, on September 6th, I returned to Urbana from Dallas, Texas, to begin a presumably peaceful retirement. The last 12 months, however, have brought painful physical injury, the deaths of several dear friends, and much soul-searching, thanks to COVID-19. But I'm also back at UUCUC after a 20-year absence in the city where I belong, so I'm counting many blessings as well. And I'm also aware of the many unspoken joys and sorrows that are here with us this morning, just holding those in my heart. In this time of uncertainty, may the joys of our personal lives renew and support us. May we feel the love that runs through all things and trust in its strength to sustain and give us courage. We will now have a time of reflection, meditation, and prayer with musical accompaniment. First, I'd like to say that I am so grateful to Matthew Gladden. It's wonderful to be together again after the summer, creating powerful services, and to hear our glorious piano, and to literally feel its vibrations through this pulpit and through my feet as I stand here. And it just makes me look forward to the day when we will all be here together again. I'd like to begin my reflection with a confession. I know that's not a Unitarian Universalist word. Nonetheless, I have a confession, which is that for most of my life, maybe like most of you, I have taken a functioning postal service for granted. And like a lot of you, also, I'm sure, I carry some sweet stories as well. I thought I'd share a few of them with you. I remember years ago coming across the love letters between my grandparents as they were courting in the early 20th century. They both came from the same tiny rural town in northwestern Iowa. But my grandfather had gone off, it's impressive, as a poor boy to go to school and medical school, and my grandmother was studying piano in Chicago. And what really struck me at the time is that at that time, mail was delivered twice a day. And actually between Iowa, northwestern Iowa and Chicago, you could get mail that was sent the day before the very next day. And so their letters to each other were little notes. It was almost like a sort of early 20th century version of text messaging because it was so immediate. Something like, "Hi, honey, how was your day? I ran into so-and-so on the street and send their love." And then the other one would write back with something in response. It was quite moving to see the beginning of our family as it is now at that moment through the Postal Service. Here's another story. I lived on Lummi Island, Washington, for a number of years. Pretty small place, only about 200 residents. And there was a little tiny post office. And several times I got letters addressed simply to Florence Kaplow, Lummi Island, Washington. No street address, no zip code, no nothing. And they always got to me. But because I knew that the people at the post office knew exactly who I was and where I lived, I was pretty careful about what I wrote on postcards, kind of assuming that they might read them. And if you, on our Members and Friends Facebook page, if you listen, Tamara read a story from her friend Vince that actually corroborates my concern about my postcards being read. A slightly risque story, actually. Later, I spent time in an even more remote area in Washington State on the southern Washington coast, my little cabin there. And there's no mail delivery. And so the only way I could get mail was to have it sent general delivery to the also very small post office there. And I got to know one of the postal clerks pretty well, Anna. And because I didn't get mail very often, sometimes I would just forget to go by the post office and check general delivery. And more than once, but I'll tell you about this one time, I was on the roof of my cabin removing the endless, interminable amount of moss that accumulates on my roof all the time. And Anna drove up after work in her car, waved at me, said she had a little mail for me, and dropped it on my front porch. And at another time, I am sure against all postal regulations, that's why I'm not using her last name, she would just give my mail to my neighbor who'd bring it by for me. That's often how small town postal service works. Since COVID hit and I started working in my living room, I have watched my mail carrier arrive almost every single day, and I've been really struck by the through rain and shine business. The day of that windstorm a few weeks ago, it was feeling like, literally, like something out of The Wizard of Oz. And there came the mail carrier, surrounded by swirling branches from the trees in my neighborhood, with the rain beginning and carrying on nonetheless. I thought of inviting him in, COVID or no COVID, but then I realized probably what he most wanted to do was to get back to his mail truck as quickly as possible. Besides, I do have a cat. But seriously, how many of us realize how amazing our postal system is? The mundane magic that Julia Hamilton referred to in her poem. How amazing it is, how amazing its people are, its venerable history, and its connection to the foundations of our democracy. I didn't, not fully, before working on this service. It's one of the advantages of being a UU minister. You get to learn about a lot of things that you never knew you would have a reason to learn about. Turns out, Benjamin Franklin really started the American postal system. As the very first Postmaster General and developer of the system for the Continental Congress before independence. Having postal service between the colonies made organizing for independence and soliciting support from Europe possible. By putting mail riders out on the roads at night, which was new, a letter could go from Philadelphia to New York and be returned within 24 hours. He also made sure that newspapers would be delivered at the same low rate as mail letters, which allowed news to also travel very fast. It is not an exaggeration to say that we might still be a colony of the British Empire without the Postal Service. After independence, the Postal Service became a branch of the federal government established by the Constitution, which it is to this day, despite the pervasive idea that it is somehow quasi-privatized, like Amtrak. Of the 11-member Board of Governors of the US Postal Service, 9 are appointed by the President and confirmed by the US Senate, and the Board of Governors elects the Postmaster General, who is also confirmed. Here are some fun facts, courtesy of, I'll admit it, Wikipedia, and also the US Postal Service website. I hope these are good sources. I imagine they are. It is the largest mail system on the planet, delivering in this year alone 48% of the world's mail, more than 600 million pieces of mail every, and I'm just going to pause here because when I first read this, I wrote year. And then I looked a little more closely, and it's day. 600 million pieces of mail a day. Also, we pay less for mailing letters and packages than most people do anywhere in the world, including Europe. And in many countries now, there is no functioning postal service at all. For instance, I have a friend in Cambodia, and I was shocked to discover there was no way to send her a letter. Loss of a functional public mail service is one of the signs of national dysfunction. In 2018, the post office delivered 900 million Christmas packages. So really, we should call our postal service and its postal workers Santa Claus. A Jewish friend of mine used to bake and bring cookies to her local post office during the Christmas season as a gift to the postal workers and clerks, knowing that at that time of year they were dealing with the most irritated people that they would have to deal with for the entire year. There are 500,000 employees of the US Postal Service, and they traveled last year 1.34 billion miles to deliver our mail. And the longest regular rural route is in Kansas, where the mail carrier travels in this one area 183 miles every day to deliver the mail. Basically, everyone in this country, regardless of location or means, has a right to send and receive mail. That's pretty amazing in this country that in so many ways is steeped in inequality and lack of access. In the last presidential election, 23% of the total ballots cast nationally were delivered by mail. That number, of course, will be much, much higher this year. Okay, that was a lot of facts, but as an aside, I just need to add this. My favorite scene from the second Men in Black movie was near the opening. It really is the opening. The character played by Tommy Lee Jones had retired at the end of the first movie, and as per regulation, his memory had been wiped clean of the knowledge that he had worked as a sort of immigration officer for aliens from other planets. So he had no idea of his former job, and he'd been farmed out to this tiny little post office in the desert, and unbeknownst to him, most of the other postal workers were actually aliens from other planets. Even thinking of this makes me laugh, because really, how many times have you secretly wondered if maybe one or more of your coworkers were in fact aliens from other planets? But laughter aside, the Postal Service has been under attack really strongly since the 1990s. Reading this history was very painful. Most of you probably know the most recent developments. Earlier this year, the House passed a $10 billion package to support the US Postal Service through the COVID crisis, and the Senate so far has refused to even bring it to a vote. In May, Louis DeJoy, who has donated $1.6 million to our current president's campaign fund, and the same amount again to the Republican Party just since 2016, became Postmaster General. He had no prior experience with the US Postal Service. He began immediately by banning overtime, which immediately began slowing mail service. You might have noticed this. And that, of course, builds resentment against the Postal Service. Mailboxes and mail sorting machines began disappearing across the country in the name of cost-saving measures, including right here in CU. Out in my former home state of Washington, there were postal workers who defied those orders and did not dismantle the machines. The Inspector General of the Post Office has opened an investigation into these actions with no report to date. And of course, none of this is particularly comforting with an election coming up and the dangers of voting in person rather abundantly clear. We're lucky that here in Champaign County, we will have ballot boxes where we can put our votes, our ballots. That's not true everywhere. Here's one kind of neat fact, though. Some of you may know this as well. Our representative to the US Congress from this district, actually voted against his own party for that big Postal Service support package. I sent him a thank you note, my very first one, to that particular representative. Maybe you thought that sign that I described about saving our post office at the beginning of the service was a little dramatic. For months now, I was getting "Save our post office" emails in my inbox, which I was ignoring because they seemed a little overly dramatic. No longer. This is real. I invite each and every one of you on this Labor Day weekend to dig deep in your heart for why a national, available to everyone Postal Service matters to you. And if it does, to make sure, as Tamara urged, we continue to have one, so that, as Julia wrote in that poem earlier, our children do not shake their heads and wonder at all the things we allowed to slip away. And also, next time you see a postal clerk or your mail carrier, thank them. Thank them for all they have brought you, all the things they have probably brought you during COVID, their commitment to service, and the way they help to hold this far-flung, crazy country together. Thank you. And now let's sing an old favorite hymn, "We Would Be One." And the recording is from a previous service in this very sanctuary, so please sing along. The only people that are going to hear you are your spouses or children, maybe you have spouses, your pets, so just belt it out. They won't mind. They already know how you sound. And let's really sing together. We would be one. In this time of transformation and peril, may our love deepen and widen until all are held within its embrace. And also, I want to invite you to join us today in our fellowship hour so that you can welcome Reverend Sally Fritchie as close to in person as we can manage right now, and let her know that we are happy to have her here. You can find the link to that fellowship hour Zoom on our live stream page, and every blessing to you all.
We extinguish our chalice today with these words from UU Minister Reverend Elizabeth Selly Jones. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts until we are together again. Go in peace. Amen.